Hello and welcome to our channel, The Ministry of the Real Truth. We happened to come across, quite by accident, a man named A.Benner who has authored many books, one of them being the Torah, a mechanical translation. Here is a little about A.Benner, if you don't already know about him. A.Benner has authored over 20 books related to the studies of the alphabet, language and culture of the Bible, and is an instructor in biblical Hebrew and has taught thousands how to read the Bible in Hebrew for themselves. Mr. Benner desires to assist his readers with proper biblical interpretation based on the original Hebraic context of the Bible, so they may gain a deeper understanding and insight into the intended meaning of the words of the scriptures. He discovered that most biblical and Hebrew teachings are missing a key ingredient, a cultural background to the language of the Bible. To this end, he has dedicated over 20 years of research documenting the connections between the language of the Bible and the culture in which it was written. Here's a bit more information about where he lives and how to contact him, and here's his ancient lexicon of the Hebrew Bible for purchase, etc. So that's a little bit about him. And we found online in the public domain, public access, his book, or a couple of his books, one of them being New Testament Greek to Hebrew Dictionary, 500 most frequent Greek words and names translated back into Hebrew for English readers, A.Benner. To the person who commented on us talking about something else in another video being in public domain, public access, here is verification that here it is open source. Okay. At this particular site that we mentioned to them, you can look at it, you can do a video on it. Copyright wise, you can't plagiarize it, claim it as your own, or rewrite it and claim it as your own, as your original work, on sell it to make money, will profit from it, and so forth. So this is A.Benner's New Testament Greek to Hebrew Dictionary. Let's have a quick look inside, where he states 500 Greek words and names retranslated back into Hebrew for English readers. Table of contents, acknowledgement, introduction, about Strong's numbers. The Strong's numbering system, which is used in this book, was developed by James Strong in the late 19th century. This numbering system assigns a unique number to each Hebrew word found in the Old Testament and each Greek word found in the New Testament. James Strong, in his book Strong's Exhaustive Concordance of the Bible, connected each word in the King James Version of the Bible with the number of the Hebrew or Greek word that English word is translating. For instance, in John 1:1, the word beginning is a translation of the Greek word arche, which James Strong has assigned the number 746. When you look up the Strong's Greek number 746 in this book, you find that the equivalent Hebrew word is Strong's Hebrew number 7225, which is Bereshit, meaning summit. The following is the Strong's exhaustive concordance entries for the word beginning. In the far right column are the Strong's numbers 756 and 746, and so forth. Methods of translating New Testament Greek back into Hebrew. The first and most helpful method of translating Greek into Hebrew is by using the Septuagint as a dictionary. As an example, in the Septuagint of Genesis 2:3, we find the phrase in the Greek kai eulogesen ho theos, which is a translation of the Hebrew phrase by Yevarek Elohim, From this we learn that the Greek verb eulogio is a translation of the Hebrew verb barach, and the Greek noun theos is a translation of the Hebrew noun Elohim. The second method is as simple as determining the meaning of a given Greek word and selecting the Hebrew word with the same meaning. For instance, the Greek noun angelos means messenger, which is the exact same definition of the Hebrew noun malach. Selection of Greek words in the dictionary. The differences between Greek and Hebrew. One of the major differences between Greek and Hebrew is its philosophy. Greek is a very abstract language, while Hebrew is much more concrete. An example is the word pistis, Strong's Greek, number 4102, which means faith and intellectual acceptance of what is true, a very abstract term. We came across a person who wrote on a blog or a website, or even to Jeff A.Benner, and says, Mr. Benner, reading your book, New Testament Greek, the Hebrew Dictionary, and you talked about faith, and you're actually wrong. And they gave comparisons. There was no reply underneath, so don't know what happened from there. And we also found a critic of Jeff Benner on Christian Chat Forum, who states, Jeff Benner, Bible critic with no infallible Bible to believe in. Jeff Benner is another self-appointed Bible critic who couldn't show you a complete, inspired and infallible Bible in any language, including the Hebrew and much less the Greek, to save his life. This person had seen a few of his videos in which he claims there are errors in the King James Bible, and the man simply does not know what he's talking about. There are 4 or 5 primary errors he thinks he's found in the King James Bible, at least in his videos that this person has seen so far. The first big error Mr. Benner supposedly found in the King James Bible is in Leviticus 20:10, and here our Bible critic really shines forth in all this blundering, every man for himself mentality. Here is his video he calls Errors in the KJV on YouTube. The verse reads, And the man that committeth adultery with another man's wife, even he that commit adultery with his neighbour's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. Here our Bible critic tells us that even the Hebrew Masoretic text itself is wrong for duplicating the phrase, even he that committeth adultery with his neighbour's wife. He tells us that undoubtedly some scribe accidentally copied the same lines twice, and that the second phrase shouldn't be there. And it's a long critiquing of Benner and his videos and his claims in comparison with the New International Version Bible and so forth. It's very, very long. Mr. Benner is all hung up on the intricate technicalities of Hebrew grammar, which do not apply nor are even necessary when translating God's word into English or most foreign languages either, for that matter. The word genders of Hebrew would not carry over to the same word genders when translated into Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, French, German. Mr. Benner has no infallible Bible to give you, and other Bible scholars clearly disagree with his personal opinions. He has a right to his own opinions, but that is all they are. He is not a spokesman for God, and he most certainly is not our final authority. Even he admits in his video that there are a lot of unknowns in textual criticism. This person's advice for those who might be led to believe that Mr. Jeff Benner actually knows what he's talking about and is some kind of biblical authority, it's found in the book of Proverbs. Go from the presence of a foolish man when thou perceivest not in him the lips of knowledge. Proverbs 14:7. And there's some more critics here below. The Torah, a mechanical translation. This is one of Jeff A.Benner's other books, which is a new and unique method of translation that brings you a literal and faithful word-for-word translation of the Hebrew text through the English language. The mechanical method of translating the Bible is a new and unique style of translating that translates each Hebrew word, prefix, and suffix exactly the same way every time it occurs in the same order as they appear in the Hebrew text. This translation will allow a reader who has no background in Hebrew to see the text from a Hebraic perspective without the interjection of a translator's theological opinions and bias. As this style of translation also identifies the morphology of each Hebrew word used in the English language, it is a useful tool for those who are learning to read Biblical Hebrew. This translation includes, and there's a whole list of them here, and you could buy it from his particular website. We looked for him on YouTube and found this video where he
Shalom, fellow YouTubers.
talks about
if you're interested in proper biblical
Bereshit or Genesis,
like I am, then you've probably come across Church Bandit series Genesis hoaxes as I have. While I do share some of Church Bandit's view on the biblical text of Genesis, I was a little concerned about his method of translation and interpretation. Not meaning to show any disrespect to Church Bandit, but he is not using the Hebrew text for his interpretation as he claims, as I will clearly demonstrate here. But instead, he's manipulating the text to conform to his own personal viewpoint.
And he speaks extensively on that, proving that this particular person is doing so. Here's a comment here, basically about the video. And we put a comment underneath because he said something like, this is what's in Bereshit or Genesis in the Hebrew, this is how it originally should be, etc., etc. So we put a little comment here, and then it is very different in the original ancient, very old Lashana Artika Saprea, the language of God. He spoke to Adam and Eve in the garden. Of the original ancient, very old Assyrian Aramaic, we'll be told by Assyrians there is actually no Assyrian Aramaic, it's just Aramaic. Of the original ancient, very old Tav Asherit, the older sister language of the original ancient, very old Tav Ivri or Avri, or Hotep, which we haven't come across yet, or original ancient, very old Hebrew, translated by a native-born Aramaic-speaking translator from Mesopotamia, Syria, with 15 years' experience, Victor N.Alexander. From the Breetah, in ancient Aramaic, or Genesis in English, Genesis 1. As the beginning, the Son of God, Yeshua Mashiach, Jesus the Christ, before he was known as Jesus the Christ, creates the heavens and the earth was for him, and by him, and the darkness was over the face of infinite space, and the Spirit of God was over the layers of the water. And then compare John 1:1-3 with these footnotes. John 1:1, in the beginning of creation there was the manifestation, and that manifestation was with God, and God was the embodiment of that manifestation, or that revelation, that which was not known. They had knowledge of God in ancient days, but they've never been able to see God. Moses was afraid to look upon the face of God because he felt he would die, because God is too glorious, too righteous, etc. He's too holy, pure, etc. 1:1, John 1:2, this was in the beginning of God, this manifestation. Footnotes, John 1:1, all instances, literal Aramaic word retained, manifestation. Milta or miltha is an Aramaic word that has been set aside for only sacred use. Only the Messiah, Isha or Eoshua, Jesus the Messiah, is ever to be called the Milta. Grammatically, Milta means the essential connotation for a person or thing. There is no true English language equivalent for this word. So, Victor Alexander, when he was translating from the original manuscripts into English, had to find the nearest English equivalent, and it happened to be manifestation, or revealing, or revelation. The Greek logos, the word Milta is translated as logos in the Greek original. What does logos mean in Greek? According to Herodotus, it meant the truth, but the Americanized English. The modern Americanized English, modern Bible translations use the Greek and term it as the Word, referring to Christ. The term was used as far as back as the 6th century BC. Aristotle wrote about it, subsequent philosophers wrote about it, the Catholics, Roman Catholics Jerome and Augustine wrote about it and made it into the holy word describing Jesus in the Western tradition of Christianity. Note it says here the Western tradition or form of Christianity. However, Milta is the original word that the writers of the scriptures used to describe Joshua, Mashiach, or Isho Mashiach, Jesus the Messiah. Milta is more than the word, it is more than a philosophical concept describing Jesus as a spokesman for God. Joshua, or Isho Mashiach, is more than a spokesman in the Gospel of John. So the Logos, the Greek Logos, is incorrect. Okay, we've looked at the preview of that. Here is his website, Jeff Benner's website, the Mechanical Translation Project, and it has home, articles, contact, mail list, you can donate, and it has a bookstore. And it reads, a new and unique method of translation that brings you a literal and faithful word-for-word translation of the Hebrew text through the English language. And it covers Genesis to the book of Psalms. Genesis chapter 1, here is the supposed Hebrew, and then here he puts it into English. So in the summit, Elohim shaped the skies and the land, and there's more Hebrew here. RMT, and the land had existed in confusion and was unfilled, and darkness was upon the face of the deep water, and the winds of Elohim was fluttering upon the face of the waters. And Elohim said, light will exist, and light existed. And you can continue on to the next part. It'll say at the top here 2, it'll be 2 to 30, whatever. Okay, just click on 2 and you'll see the next part of it. And here's some reviews by different people. Get the book, and he has a help here how to do a Hebrew word study, learn to read biblical Hebrew, learn ancient Hebrew. Some free courses or courses you have to pay for. So yeah, we found this pretty interesting, especially when we went through Genesis. Okay, we're in Genesis, so go have a look at a certain verse. What was it? 127 or something. Okay. Because of note, here it says, and Elohim shaped the human in his image. In the image of Elohim he shaped them, male and female he shaped them. Obviously there's 2 or more. Yeah, that's the first creation act or account of a human being or beings being made. And then we found, when we went to Genesis 2, and Elohim finished in the 7th day his business with which he did, and he ceased in the 7th day from all his business which he did. Basically he stopped his creation, he didn't need to create anymore, and he exalted the 7th day, obviously the 7th day, and he set him apart, given that in him he ceased from all his business which Elohim shaped to make. And further down, after another mention of the creating acts, the trees, the plants, the animals, etc., Yahweh the Elohim moulded the human of dirt from the ground, and he exhaled in his nostrils a breath of life, and the human existed for a living soul. So that's a second account of a being or beings being created, but molded from the dirt, or the earth, or the ground. And he breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the human existed for a living soul. And he told him, go multiply, increase, replenish the earth, or something like that. So we compare it with Victor N.Alexander's translation of the original Lishana Atika Saprea, the language that God spoke to Adam and Eve, of the Assyrian Aramaic or Aramaic, of the original ancient very old Tav Asherit, sister language of the original ancient very old Tav Ivri, or Hotep, or the original ancient very old Hebrew. This is Breetah, or Genesis 1, and it goes through the Creation Act here down to 127, where God creates the human being to resemble his own visage. He created the male and female visage, if we define it, with his face, his likeness. (127) literal Aramaic word, Adam. 127.2 literal Aramaic idiomatic construction. That's the way they express themselves and bring it across. And there God created to Adam, and there created God to Adam with his visage. In the visage of God he created him, male and female he created them. That's the first human being or being creation act, right? Creating act. 128 literal Aramaic idiom, God creates the Aboriginal man first. He's not talking about the Aboriginal man from Australia, he's talking about the Neanderthal man, that being who kept his indigenous self, culture, etc. And then Genesis 2 or Breetah 2, further down, he does a second being creating act. Breetah 7 or Genesis 2:7. Breetah 2:7 or Genesis 2:7. And the Lord God moulded Adam from the dust to resemble himself, in his likeness and his image, etc. So here's the difference in the second creating act. He moulded Adam from the dust, or the earth, or the ground, to resemble himself. And he blew on their faces the breath of life, and Adam became a living soul. That's the living breath. But also, unlike the Neanderthal man, or the pre-Adamic man, the Aborigine, he had that Spirit of God where he could communicate, be in the presence, walk and talk with God. The Aboriginal Neanderthal man, pre-Adamic man, didn't have that, so he basically parted and relied on his animal instincts, where later on in possibly Breetah 6, Genesis 6, it talks about the Aboriginal, the pre-Adamic, the Neanderthal man interbreeding, or the sons of God interbreeding with the Neanderthal man, pre-Adamic man. Sons of God being those who were born into this holy line, Seth, his sons, his descendants, who then began calling on the name of God, and they were called children of God, sons of God. It's not talking about fallen angels or anything like that. Okay. None of that UFO nanu stuff. But there's two. It's talking about like this one holy line. They left their rightful place, and they saw the daughters of men were beautiful, so they married whoever they liked. Here it is here. Seth. Adam took his wife again, and she became pregnant and gave birth and called his son Seth. His name Seth because God gave her another offspring in place of Abel, who was killed by Cain. And to Seth also was born a son, and called his name Enosh. Thereafter they were called after the name of the Lord. Footnote indication here. The beginning of the line of the children of the Lord. So you had this holy line, of which the Christ would eventually come through, and then you had this ungodly line, supposedly of Cain. We don't know if Cain confessed and repented, turned back to God. We don't know that. It doesn't tell you that. But that line, the descendants of Cain, those who were ungodly, those who got out of hand, so God destroyed them in a flood, according to the scriptures, because he regretted creating them. So there's the holy line there. There's the start there. They wandered away from it, and they married women of ungodly men, and they produced these hybrid beings because they messed with these Neanderthal women, right? It's like that supposed archaeology, scientific discovery, DNA, etc., where we end up because these beings merged with and interacted with the Neanderthals, and then they had offspring which were hybrids, Neanderthal and humanoid. The offspring were hybrids. That's why we have those animal instincts, urges, rages, etc., because of that hybridization. Okay, so if you like this video, we hope you enjoyed it. If you like this video, then subscribe to our channel, give us a like, add your comments below the video, and we'll get back to you on those as soon as we can, when we can. And go tell all your friends, family, neighbours, Christian friends, etc., about these original, ancient, very old manuscripts, the Lishan Artigas Saprea, the language of God, that God spoke to Adam and Eve in the garden, and the men at the Tower of Babel spoke. Because these are translations of the originals that were copied, hand copied faithfully by the scribes and monks in Ur around 800 BCE.